Hi there! So you're an author, you've written your book, and you would like an audiobook version produced. But how do you go about finding a good and suitable narrator? Now in this video, I'll tell you the 8 main skills and attributes that you should be looking for. And stick with me until the end of the video as I will reveal some of the websites you should check out where you will find potential narrators for your audiobook project. Now, a moment ago I referred to a good and suitable narrator. Why did I use that phrase? Well, a good narrator might not be a suitable narrator. Let me explain. A good narrator will have a good clear voice. They will know how to read at the right pace and with the correct emphasis and intonation. And they will deliver excellent quality audio, which will pass all the audio quality requirements that the audiobook sales platform will require. Now that's all fine and dandy, but a good narrator isn't necessarily a suitable narrator for your book. If your book is fiction and it contains plenty of dialogue between different characters, and some female, some male, probably different ages, nationalities perhaps, then will the narrator be able to cope with all of that? You shouldn't expect them necessarily to deliver scores of different voices, but you should expect them to act the personalities of the characters convincingly enough to make the delivery entertaining and appropriate for the story. Now, if your book is a documentary piece with no speaking characters, then a nice clear voice with the right notes of seriousness and gravitas might well work for you. Or maybe the subject matter is not so heavy and a lighter, even humorous read might be more appropriate. Now, nothing is set in stone, but for example, if your book is a thriller with a male lead character, then it probably ought to be read by a male. And one with a female lead character, a female narrator would be best. Similarly, if your book is set in the US, it would usually be better to have a US narrator than a UK one, and vice versa. Now, you should ask your prospective narrator to let you hear samples, of course, but most importantly, ask them to record a short passage from your book. Around 10 minutes or less ought to be enough, but choose the passage carefully. If you'll require character voices in your book, include a passage that involves some dialogue between characters so that you can hear how they handle it. Don't worry too much if they don't deliver the voice of a particular character quite the way you imagined when you wrote it, because at this stage they are unlikely to have read the whole book to get to know the characters properly, and you probably won't have briefed them fully about it. So finer points such as those can be focused upon later should you select them as your narrator. So what you want to find out at this stage is how well they deliver dialogue. Is it convincing and well-fashioned and, above all, realistic, entertaining and well acted? You'll probably want a few different narrators to give you samples from your book. They should be prepared to do one for you free of charge, and maybe you could get the opinions of your friends and family to see if they like what they're hearing as well. And whilst the way that the narrator reads and the sounds of their voice is obviously pretty crucial, there are other things to consider. So here are those 8 key skills and attributes that I said I would come to. So firstly, number 1, how much do they charge? This is relevant if you're intending to commission them under a pay for production basis as opposed to a royalty share basis. Now remember that if the narrator is handling all the production themselves, so not just the narration and the recording, but the editing, mastering and uploading too, then the amount of time they will spend for each hour of recorded content is likely to be around 7 to 8 hours. If they are spending less time than that, or claiming to, then I would wonder if they are cutting corners. So a reasonable per finished hour rate is about £200 to £250 or $250 to $325. But be clear that this is the finished hour rate, not their hourly working rate, which for a finished hour rate of say £200 is going to be around the £25 mark based on 7 or 8 hours of work, which is hardly a fortune. If you haven't done so already, by the way, check out my video how much does it cost to have an audiobook produced? After you've watched this one, I've included the link to that video in the notes below. Okay, number 2, what other books have they narrated? It would be useful to know if they have narrated books of a similar genre and to hear some samples from them. Number 3, can they deliver good regional and international accents? Because if your book takes place in a particular region or country, will they be able to deliver at least a reasonably convincing accent for those particular areas? Number 4, do they appear to be excited by your book? It's not a must, but if they clearly enjoy the story or the prospect of it, then they're more likely to do a good job for you. 5, if they are independent narrators, not provided through your publisher or an agency, then it is likely that they will handle a complete production, including editing and mastering. And if so, what is the audio quality of the work that they have produced so far? How does it sound to you? You want to be sure it doesn't include any echo, usually referred to as reverb, which, if it does, would suggest a poor quality microphone or a recording environment that is not properly soundproofed and fitted with proper audio insulation. Now, whilst on the subject of your publisher or an agency coming up with a narrator for you, my suggestion is that you have a say in the choice. It's your book, you know it best, and your opinion will matter at least as much as theirs. Number 6, what are the narrator's reviews like? Now, there will always be some bad ones, often undeserved, but you should be looking for an average performance rating of 4 out of 5 or above. Number 7, can they provide references from other authors? One of the most important aspects for you to consider is how easy will it be to work with them, especially if both you and they are working independently of agents or publishers. Will they take direction in the right spirit and communicate promptly and clearly as the project progresses? I often suggest having a video call early on so that you can get to know each other better from the outset and discuss the project in a bit more detail. And finally, number 8, how experienced are they? Now, someone who has never produced an audiobook before is obviously going to be a risk, but if their samples sound good and their price is reasonable, it should be less than average, of course, in those circumstances, then they could be worth a punt. I will forever be grateful to the first author I ever worked for, Nick Albert, who gave me my first break, and I'm glad to say it all worked out fine for both of us. Everyone has to start somewhere. Okay, now earlier I promised I would give you some ideas of where to go to find a good and suitable audiobook narrator. Now, perhaps the best places to start your search are the major audiobook platforms and retailers such as ACX, the audiobook production arm of Audible, Findaway Voices, which is owned by Spotify, and Voquent. But also websites offering freelance services such as Upwork, People Per Hour. And then there's Voices.com and Voices123 who specialise in voiceover artists. Now, often the profiles of narrators on these sites will include samples that you can listen to, and on all of these sites you can invite potential narrators for your book to audition. And whilst you're at it, take a look on Facebook too, where you will find narrator groups to which you could maybe post requests for auditions. Finally, be prepared to have to wait a little while for your finished audiobook, because good narrators are often booked up several weeks or even months in advance. And once they start on your book, they might be working on it for 1 or 2 months, depending on its length, of course. But if a narrator says that they can work on your book concurrently whilst working on another, be a little wary of that. I tend to think that your narrator should be engrossed only in your book whilst they're working on it, not on one or more others at the same time. And when you agree a date with them to start, make sure that you're going to be available to spend an hour or so a day listening to the latest chapter recording that they send you and giving them feedback promptly to keep the progress ticking along. So that's it. I've included a bullet point summary of the points I've made here in the video description below. And if you have any questions you want to ask me, then do feel free to post them in the comments section. I will answer them as quickly as I can. If you found this video useful, then please click the thumbs up button. And how about subscribing to my channel, which already includes videos on a wide range of audiobook related issues of interest to authors, narrators and listeners. Thanks for looking in, and see me again soon. Bye for now.